And we are live. What is up, fam? Welcome to the Doctor of Stuff channel. I'm your host, Doctor of Stuff. You can call me Doc. As a disclaimer, like I always say, anything I discuss on this channel, including anything I say today, should not be considered financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not even a real doctor. Okay. So let's get into it. And hey, you guys might notice I got this man. I got a 2-year-old, and I was messing around with him, and I got a nice big headbutt from him. So I'm hoping he can be like Josh Emmett and be in the MMA or something like that. But anyways, you gotta be careful with that one. Apparently, didn't have those issues with my daughter and headbutting. But so look, we have a lot to discuss today. But before we do that, I would love it if you guys could smash, push, crush, or gently caress that like button, the subscribe button, and the all notification button. I do a lot of research on anything that I discuss here. I did a lot on reviewing this interview, right? This roundtable. And I'll set the stage for that, right? For some of the people who are here who maybe haven't seen it. I'm assuming the majority, if not everyone, has seen it, but just in case. But I do a lot of research there, and I just appreciate any support we could get. So, okay, enough of that. Let's kind of set the stage here, right? There's been a lot of upheaval in the Twitter sphere with that latest interview by Metamona, right? A lot of people think that I see a lot of people who are saying that they feel like Metamona was constantly attacking David, that she was paid by opposition. Some people thought that it was a bullish interview for Cryptoys and a very bad look for VeVe. A lot of different varying opinions, right? But regardless of what side people are on, like a lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people reached out to me and were like, hey, I would like to get your thoughts on it. I feel really bad. I was really looking forward to the interview, and I had lost track of when it was. And so I went live with on Thursday, not realizing that it was literally the exact same time as this roundtable, right? And so I didn't get to watch it initially, but then again, pretty much right after, people started contacting me and wanted to know my thoughts. And I was like, let me look at it, and maybe I'll write a response. But there was a lot actually. And so I was like, I think initially Sanjay had kind of made a post, and he had said, hey, Metamona, like, we'd like to talk about this certain clip or something. And Metamona said, great. And I was like, hey, I'd love to be a speaker there on that. But that Twitter space with her didn't happen. So I was just like, all right, well, let's make a video about it and kind of discuss these things, right? Hey, and also, please feel free in the comments, right? If you think I'm missing something, or if you disagree with one of my assessments, I want to address that. I love the dialogue here. And I'm not going to sit there and admit that I'm 100% right all the time. So, like, if someone brings something to my attention and they make a valid point, I will totally accept that. So to set the stage, right, for those who were watching, who didn't watch the interview, Metamona, she's been working very hard to establish herself as kind of like a Web3 journalist, right? And she has a background in broadcast journalism, and she's bringing that experience right into Web3. So also, as a disclaimer, I've interacted a lot with Metamona. I really like Metamona. She's covered some of the projects that I'm really interested in, like Cornucopia's game. She's a very, very pleasant person. I really like her a lot. And from my interactions to date, right, and I guess I'm addressing that one point where people think that she was like sponsored or something to to attack VeVe. I don't think that's the case at all. I just want to get that out there. Not at all, right? But there are some things where that we'll go over, where I can understand where people are questioning some of that, right? So we'll go over that too. But I do like that Web3 is attracting people like Mona. And let's see, yeah, I mean, because I do think that she, from other videos that I've watched, she tries to provide a balanced approach. And she was trying to bring this to the topic of our show on Thursday, which was supposed to be a roundtable between three CEOs, right? The CEO of Pudgy Penguins, of VeVe, and of Cryptoys. Unfortunately, Luca Netz, who is the CEO of Pudgy Penguins, he was traveling to ETH Denver. He couldn't make it. So it ended up just being Will Reinrob. I hope I'm saying that right, Will. And from Cryptoys, and then David Yu from VeVe. So I want to share, before we get any further, right? Metamona, she's addressed this, right, as people have been complaining on Twitter, and I think it's important to share, what her intent is in general with this video, this interview that she did. So I'm going to share this here real quick. Okay. So she says, and this is actually in a response to Sanjay's post about having a Twitter space, but she's like, well, I'm not a holder of VeVe, Cryptoys, or Pudgies. My role as a Web3 journalist transcends ownership and collecting. My commitment is to go after the truth and ask what everyone wants to know, but no one wants to ask. And before we go any further, I do not mind hard questions at all. So if people are complaining that David got hard questions, I think some of them were hard, but I also want to touch on some of those and kind of the whole context of the interview there. But if I invite CEOs to sit across from me, rest assured, I've done my homework, understand their operations inside and out, and am ready to ask the hard questions when needed. The impact of exchange rugging is real. People get hurt when exchanges go down, and we're going to talk about this because obviously she's talking about Bitforex. That was a huge focal point, I feel like, in this interview. That's never okay. It falls on me to question the reason behind these failures and look closely at every model and approach to help and lead our audience to answers. That's what real journalism is about. I agree. You got to ask these questions. I'm going to be the person in Web3 who is always honest, always ready to pose tough questions, listen, and say what's on my mind, in the mind of every viewer. Criticize me if you must, unfollow if you feel compelled, but know I am out here for our people, communities, and for innovation. My Web3 mission is to uphold honesty, establish trust, and follow ethics in everything I do. That is very important to share that. And again, I truly believe that her intent is not, like to necessarily single out anyone. That can be the intent, but then let's discuss about like what happened there, right? So I just felt like we need to go over that. But before we get into it, right, I want to shout out Bill Gardner, always the first, almost always the first to come in here, make a comment and like. We're going to get to some of the comments here. Wes, I see some of the things. So we'll get to some of this as we're going, but I appreciate some of the people. What up, Omi Child, Randy Chavez, my bae. Omar, I appreciate you. Arbear, what's up? Have you commented before, Arbear? And then Mr. MC1, I would have really enjoyed to have that space set up. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I think that this is okay too, right? But I think it's important to kind of touch on some of this stuff. And what I'm going to do, right, is I'm actually going to share some clips, right, and then comment on how I feel about some of those, right? So what up, Walrus King, VeVe Ben. And I'm just trying to get, before I get to some of these questions, what's up, Big A? I haven't seen you in a while. And okay, so let's get into it, okay? Right here. I'm going to show, let's see, I'm trying to get my screen up. We can share this clip. And so the first clip I'm going to do is kind of Mona's introduction to what this roundtable is going to be, right? So please let me know in the comments. Actually, I need to make sure, I tried to test it, but that you can hear this as I share it. So I'm gonna play a clip here and make sure that this works.
Thank you so much, and many, many more to come. But you guys might be wondering why these founders and why this roundtable today. We chose these two founders, hopefully three, because they're among the top leaders in digital collecting. And because we love what they've made. We love what they've created. They have the same mission. They're here to build the next iteration of collecting in the digital world. That's a huge endeavor. And the truth is, despite all the challenges, all the crypto cycles, and all the obstacles, they've persevered. They're still here. They're making progress, and we're happy to have them. And what's interesting about these founders is that they have the same mission, but they're operating under two distinct business models.
Okay. So first off, they haven't all been through crypto cycles. Cryptoys hasn't really been. They came in kind of in the middle of the bear market. So they came in during the middle of the bear market, but they haven't had a chance to like hit all-time highs like VeVe and Pudgy Penguins did, and then have their users experience that significant drop in value of the collectibles and a lot of the frustrations that came with that. So I don't feel like that was fair to VeVe and to Pudgy Penguins, who's Luca isn't there to set Cryptoys on the same level as like, hey, you've dealt with a lot of the same problems to date. Now, that's not to say that Cryptoys hasn't had their share of problems. They have. Not the same level of problems there. So that caught my eye is very interesting there, right? As I'm like, okay. But again, maybe she's just trying to be complimentary. I think it would have been important, and again, to set the stage, right? Mona's audience, she's saying, are people who don't know a lot about Web3 and bringing this in. So I think it would have been great to even just make that distinction and be like, some of you have experienced, the ups and downs of a bull/bear cycle. Some of you, you guys have all dealt with different issues and problems, right? And look, maybe you guys are going to think that I'm nitpicky, but it's important because as I'm watching the whole video, I feel like we'll just go over it. But like I'm bringing this up for a reason. Okay, so let's see. Let's get back to. Okay, so we're going to go to around 8 minutes here. And props to Mona for bringing up the Bit4X issue. I think that there's some people who would have shied away from that. Look, there were a lot of people who were very impacted by this. One of my good friends, Crypto Rain, had 30 million OMI on there. I had another really good buddy of mine who had 18 million OMI on that, right? Like, so it's not like I don't personally know people who are impacted by this. So I think it's great. I think it's great that she brought this up. I have no issues with that, but let's kind of like lead into this here, right?
Approximately 7% of the OMI supply. To do this, I had to study your business models. And I hope you know that for the past 3 days, I've been studying your business models.
I want to play that little clip too, because I'm going to talk about that in a little bit.
If you need to hire me, I am available here. But I nailed it. Okay. But I have to admit to something. I want to share something with you. As I was researching and learning about each of your business models, just yesterday, I learned about this tragic Bit4X exchange incident that has shut down unexpectedly with what I learned, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, approximately 7% of the OMI supply. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, is because it's an elephant in the room, and I want to get the elephant out of the room and we get on with our conversation. And I think, when Andrew and I talked about it, it is our responsibility to all of you and to the community to address this. And because I feel bad for OMI holders, especially because they've been on this exchange for 5 years and now this happens. So, David, I want to give you the opportunity just to address your community in your own words and what this means for them, and then we can get on with our first topic.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, like I said, I think it's good that she brought this up, saying that it was on there for 5 years. But I look, I've seen a lot of people comment on VeVe should have known. VeVe should have known that about Bit4X. I've seen people say that, what's this blockchain team doing? This blockchain team should have known. They should have known that Bit4X was going to freeze and that people wouldn't be able to access this. I'm going to take a step back and provide some perspective because I think it's very important. Education about these things before we go. We can be upset, and I'm fine with people being upset, right? But then these claims like they should have known, it lacks a lot of. When I see people saying things like that, the blockchain team should have known. To me, it points to a lack of understanding and education about the space. Is all. Now, there are things, right, that can be done. Look, in businesses, there's what's called third-party vendor management, right? Like, and there's a whole structure of an organization that can be that, right? What are the contracts? Now, I'm not familiar with what contract, if any, VeVe had with the Bit4X exchange, but like I see the tokens like in general, and there's not like. They may have paid. There might have been something about paying and keeping certain tokens on or something like that. But like in most businesses, right, with third-party vendor management, one of the things is like, hey, we want to see your financials, quarterly financials, or, you know, and they kind of analyze those things. With blockchain, well, two things. We know that FTX, right, they just fraudulently made up. There was external public documents, right, that were fraudulent that they provided to all of their partners. And then there were internal documents, which were the real documents. And one of the reasons that FTX finally went down is because CZ got a hold of an internal financial statement, right, that wasn't supposed to be known about. And that's when people started questioning that. And that's kind of what started the downfall of that. So to sit there and say that VeVe should have known, then if we're going to blame that, then literally every single Web3 company should have known, even though FTX was doing shady stuff, they should have known, you know, and warned all of their users who had funds on there to do that. Like, it's just not realistic. That's not how this space works, right? And that can even happen like in TradFi and things. You can have these agreements, you can be given financial statements, but like they can be fraudulent. So I'm not saying that anything that Bit4X had was fraudulent. I don't even know if they had that type of agreement. To me, like just being listed on an exchange, I think that that's a lot smaller contract or third-party vendor, like the type of contract that would be established there is not the same as truly like a third-party vendor who's providing services for your institution to that extent. So yeah, I mean, and look, like Jojo, they had scenarios, right, of like, okay, should we present this one? Should we present this one? Or we're asking for additional loans, we need to present this one. It was all over the place. And again, all I'm trying to do is provide context here. And I think that that's really important. And this never came up in any of this. And she does provide David with a chance to be like, okay, do you want to talk about the Bit4X situation? And the thing is like, he doesn't know anything, right? He's already commented publicly, hey, we've been trying to get a hold of the Bit4X team and we are hearing nothing. We're hearing nothing. But as soon as we know, we'll let you know. And we're not only going to do that, we're going to set up a forum, right, where we can discuss this and figure out the best way moving forward. So solid answer for like a terrible situation. This is a terrible situation. And I get it because Mona, right, as she is, her whole context is for these entrepreneurs who are potentially looking to get into this space. What do they need to be considering? She says that there's two platforms or two different business models. There is three different business models, right? You have Pudgy Penguins, who was a 10,000 PFP project initially. They are decentralized, based, you know, like interoperable. It's on OpenSea. It's tradable. You can store the NFTs in their cold storage. And then they went physical, and they're establishing all of their IP or certain Pudgy Penguins IP into Walmarts, right? And then as people buy these, they can then get access and kind of enter into this next little, like level interaction with that. So that's Pudgy Penguins. Then you have Cryptoys, right? And they want to be a digital toy company. And they're building out this marketplace that's for all ages. And so, I mean, that's really their key focus, right? And then VeVe is like a digital collectible platform. Both Cryptoys and VeVe are walled gardens with theirs compared to, so not two, three different business models. And maybe she slipped and said two, but she meant three. So like, I just wanted to go there. We'll go to some of these comments real quick before I go anymore. because I see, Wes, yeah, and we'll kind of cover this, and I'm going to talk about like why people, when they watch this, had this feeling that Mona seemed to be mad, or that like she had some agenda towards VeVe, and a lot of it had to do kind of with like this token thing, and I really think that, to provide some context, right, like a lot of people were affected by this, and so she's trying to figure out, like, for new entrepreneurs, should we have a token? If they set up a token, like, what's this about? Focusing on the token a lot, which is it is one big aspect of VeVe, but it's not like the biggest aspect. I mean, there's a lot more to VeVe than just the only token. So let's see. She did interrupt David a lot. Journalists do that. I will say that throughout the entire interview, I don't think that she interrupted Will once. So again, it's people's perception are like, well, wait a second, why do you keep interrupting David, but like you don't interrupt Will ever? That seems odd, right? Yeah, hey, look, smash that like button, fam. I think that Prince, I think this year is going to be one of the best years for VeVe, truly. It has been years, and there's a lot to move there. So let's see. Just looking at some of these comments. So Uno Sean, right? And shout out to Uno Sean. I've interacted with him quite a bit, and he's also in the Crypto Rain Telegram channel. But at first, thought the same as others that this was a smear campaign against VeVe. The truth is, the problem wasn't with the interview. The problem is with us. We enable VeVe too much. That's an interesting perspective. Like, I will say sometimes we do come in to defend VeVe, and I think part of it is because we're passionate, and also we've lived and breathed this project for years now, and so I think that sometimes in interviews, things aren't mentioned that we're like, we could have mentioned that, and it's fair point, Sean, right? That sometimes it's like people are looking at that and they're like, okay, well, you provided the answer. Why didn't the team provide the answer in this interview, right? That's a fair point, right? An honest interview with tough questions. There were tough questions. I'm going to touch a little bit more on those questions, though. And again, like I kind of already done this already with like the token of being like, hey, what's up with this token? This unfortunate, situation. David talk on this, and he's like, look, like we'll let you know as soon as we know. We have no idea what's happened. So let's see. I don't, Sean, like things are so bad. You'll have to expound on that. I don't know what is so bad about VeVe. I mean, there are things that they could be doing better, and there's like time frames that have been missed totally. But to say that they're just so bad, I don't know. That's an interesting point, T Beast. I didn't catch that he worked for Animoca before. I will say that I felt like he, throughout the interview, asked very fair questions. Very fair questions. All right, hold on just a second, because Randy, it keeps telling me. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. I appreciate that, Randy. Sorry. There was just some additional information that he thought it would be helpful for me to have with this interview. And I am going to talk about this. One of the things that she said is that she'd really done her research on these three companies. She'd spent 3 days, which I think 3 days is a lot. But honestly, I mean, when you're at this level, you're interviewing the CEOs of three substantial companies in this space, right? One just kind of starting out and getting their footings, but doing a lot of great things and exciting things. One that's been here and is leading the way. And then Pudgy Penguins with what they're doing with, a lot of innovation in this space. I don't know if three days was enough. I think that there was definitely some things here going through this interview where I was like, I don't feel like, I feel like you should know this then if you've researched the companies. And so let's get to a little bit of that. But okay. So they're talking about where I'm about to jump to. the different business models, right? And so Mona asks David, what model do you think is a sustainable model at this juncture and why? And that right there, I'm just going to say hindsight is 2020. Because, so hold on, let's just jump to this, right? This question.
Sending to you has to raise funds and has to generate cash flow. Let me hear your feedback on what model do you think is a sustainable model at this juncture where we are for a Web3 environment, and why?
Well,
okay, sorry. So a little bit more context, right? Like there's two different ways to raise funds, right? And she talks about this, and one of them is you can go the private equity route, or you can do a token raise, right? And she's saying at this juncture, what do you think is the more sustainable model? And fair question. And this is where I think that David could have done better in like addressing and saying, okay, well, let's provide a little bit of context. In 2017, right, we had no idea what was coming, but everyone in the space at that time, everyone was doing the ICO model, right? Because there's a lot of red tape and a lot of costs involved with private equity and raising that way, and then like you're held accountable. Like it's a completely different business structure to do it that way. And again, in 2017, everything was great, right? The SEC wasn't really coming after people. And so they had these great ideas about the tokenomics that they were going to do. They were just like, we're going to have these buybacks. We've got these burning mechanisms. Everything seemed great. And again, everyone was doing it. So then now fast forward to 2024, you've had the Ripple lawsuit. You've had, the SEC just going sue crazy, like Coinbase and Kraken and like all of these major, and everyone is like reeling from this and pulling back and being like, oh my gosh, what do we do here? And so then projects that have a token, right, that are truly looking and being like, hey, like, where's the next 10 years for us? And they're like, is there an issue with our token? If it's a security, what are the ramifications of that? Right. So there's all of this context that I feel like David could have provided and didn't. So I don't think that this was an unfair question per se, right? But there isn't that context there. And to say like at this juncture, that's where I feel like, well, yeah, hindsight's 2020. Looking back on that, she's like, hey, would you do it this way again? And he's just like, well, how many millions of dollars have we spent on legal fees trying to figure out, number one, if the token, then, and this was important too that I caught, and I do this with you guys, but I feel like my audience is more Web3 based, but I think it would have been very important at the beginning to say, we're going to be talking about tokens, but there's two types of tokens. There's a fungible token, right? And that's kind of like the cryptocurrency or the OMI token. That's the non-fungible token. That was what was stuck on Bitforex. And then there's these non-fungible tokens, and both VeVe, Pudgy Penguins, and Cryptoys have non-fungible tokens, because anyone who's listening to this for the first time and they're saying, well, VeVe, you have tokens. And I think that Will does a great job throughout kind of reiterating that and being like, well, like we have non-fungible tokens. Like we still have tokens, but they're non-fungible tokens. And VeVe has non-fungible and fungible tokens there. But anyways, like with all that David's had to review at this point and to say, would you do it differently? He says that probably, yeah, he probably would do it differently, right? Like, and Mona keeps asking, like, does this business model, like, do you need a token to have a digital collectible company? And I don't get why she asked that question. And again, when people are watching this video and they're saying, I feel like there's this targeted attack against VeVe, here you have Cryptoys that has started a digital collectible company without a fungible token, right? And then VeVe, who has, and then she's talking about Bitforex and people getting wrecked on that. And then she's like, would you do this again with everything that you know now? And does your business model require a token? Well, you know the answer to that. The answer is no. Of course it doesn't. And I will say, right, again, David could have come in and said, no. And he did say, like, no, like it doesn't need a token. But she asked that multiple times, guys. And even after he'd answered that, and again, that's where people start being like, is there an agenda here, or what's going on with that, right? Let's see. And okay, when she says that she's researched these companies, let's kind of jump to this spot here. Let's see around this.
Want for people who want to come in this space and follow your lead or Will's lead, would you tell them that tokens are actually needed
Fungible tokens.
for Web3 IPs, or can you just sell NFTs? And if tokens are needed, why are they needed? Because we have projects that are not using tokens, and they're doing it, and they're selling NFTs. So if you were to do this again, would you incorporate tokens?
So yeah, this is the second time, right? I already just went through where she kind of talks about like the business model and looking at it now. Would you do it the way you had already done it with the token raise? And now she's asking about like why are tokens needed? They're not needed, and so like I guess my confusion is if I've done the research for the company, why wasn't it like we know that tokens aren't needed for it? Why did you feel like it was important besides just doing like the funding? Like what use cases do you feel like a token would have, right? Because again, the audience or the whole premise of this is to inform potential entrepreneurs who want to enter this space, a digital collecting space, what the different business models offer. And so I was just like, do you know, like, yeah, do you know like what the use cases of a token are? Because there are literally on a monthly basis hundreds of projects that are launching or just starting or doing raises, and they have tokens associated with them, right? Like you have gaming projects, like Web3 gaming projects. Do they need a token? No. Like a lot of times, a lot of these projects that raise with tokens, they don't need a token, but they integrate that token into their ecosystem and add utility and have it interact there. Well, absolutely, right? So I just feel like, again, the way that these questions are worded, I am questioning if she does know like why any project would have a token, because then I feel like if that was already there to help the audience saying, hey, we know that we already have like projects that don't have tokens, you guys have tokens. What are the use cases for your fungible token compared to your non-fungible NFT tokens, and go from there. So that again, it just seemed off to me. And this is where I can see where people are looking and saying, I feel like VeVe is getting really attacked here. And yeah, so as David is explaining all this, right, then we kind of talked a little bit about interruptions, and we see this here. So let's go here.
To ensure that you are going down the right track and this is the best fit business model for you.
Yeah, so let me just have you pause there, because Will, you are doing that business model, right? You're doing it without tokens here. Which one of these models would you lean toward for somebody new who's coming into this space, and why?
I think, there's not a one size fits all can I answer here. I think there's 100 different ways to build a business, and here in Web3 there's a lot of different interesting angles that you can come at it with. We did not launch with a fungible token. There was a variety of reasons we chose to go that route. Not to say that there's another route that's not viable. I think there are a lot of viable paths, but for us, we really set out to build a platform that was really mindful of certain compliances right from the get-go. As a company that's aspiring to be a digital toy company, and that's really how we see ourselves, a digital toy company first. We don't see ourselves as an NFT company or a Web3 company. We use Web3 technologies, we use NFT technologies and blockchain, and we're very bullish on all these techs, but predominantly we're a digital toy company.
So shout out to Will. Will is very polished throughout this entire interview, right? But again, if I'm looking at when someone's saying like hard-hitting journalism, and I'm looking at the questions, which are tough questions to David, right? And she's talking about the pitfalls of tokens and asking David about this and should you launch that, and then basically putting it in the light of like, hey, tokens are bad. Look at people have gotten wrecked with this, and try to explain how like why this is even good. And then, hey, Will, you don't have a token. Talk about that. Talk about your experience, right? And like during this interview, there's multiple times where she just kind of like threw these like softballs to Will, where he could have totally gone on the offensive and kind of like attacked things, right? And again, shout out to Will. He was very gracious throughout this of just, and I think that he kind of recognized, okay, like there are a lot of different ways, right? And this is just the way that we chose to do this. But yeah, just very, very, very odd, guys. So we're going to get to some more comments here. I think, yeah, I mean, look, the BitForex thing sucks, and I really hope it gets resolved and people get their money back. It is looking like some sort of insolvency to me, and if that's the case, I think it'll go through the courts and people will eventually get their tokens, but I think it could be years. And I don't know what value, at what price point they would get their tokens back if they get them. So I think that's a great comment, right? Like, I think it'd be great if there's more companies in this that are just like, hey, our token's trading on this. And I think if enough people were like started demanding, right, like updates, financial updates, these type of things, is like, if our tokens gonna be trading on that, you guys are gonna be making money from this. Like, but like they don't necessarily, like, you can rogue list, right? They can just list that and they can create their own liquidity from it. So even if companies tried to fight back, it would take some time, but maybe there is something that they could do there. I feel like, again, that's where, like, starting off a comment pointing this out, but it is something that they couldn't control. But I think that there's a lot of people, probably like some of her listeners, right, that were concerned about this. So I think it was a fair question to bring up. I do. Let's see. I wasn't on that space, so I won't speak to something that I wasn't there for. Sorry, guys. I got to read some of these comments here. Okay, we got this one. Rug pull all of them, VeVe and Omi, and you still preaching guys about them. I don't understand. Look, if you can offer some support as how you think that VeVe and Omi are a rug pull, I would love that, because they've got contracts with some of the biggest Web2 companies in the entire world. I just don't agree with you. Maybe you can provide some support, something to support the rug pull comment, but I 1,000% disagree with that. Okay. Right. So Mr. MC1, right? Like, there's different ways to raise the money. And that's one thing that I don't think that, if you're talking about hard-hitting journalism and you're trying to give perspective to entrepreneurs, I think it would have been very important to dive into these different raising types, right? Using a token, because then you're not beholden to these private equity firms, right? And there's some big strings attached to that. And I think that these new entrepreneurs should be aware of what those are. And I think that was a very big missed opportunity to talk about that. And again, when I'm seeing these questions, which are tougher questions to David, again, which I'm fine with, I am not seeing the level of tough questions towards Cryptoys at all. And I'll give you some examples. Okay. So she talked about the BitForex. Fair point. She did not talk about all of the people who were upset about Cryptoys, including myself, when, like, I got introduced to Cryptoys before they had, they had some products out there. They hadn't launched Star Wars yet. And, but I've been introduced to it when I was at NFT NYC. Shout out to Steph Sudo. She was great. She showed me an opening animation, which I was like, I love that. I wish VeVe would do that. It was a really great experience. So I bought quite a few Cryptoys there, and was really excited. And I spent quite a bit of money there. And then after I had done that, and after a lot of people had done that, there was this like buy one, get one, free. And I just was like, yo, what? I mean, that did two things, right? It completely diluted the market, which isn't even there. I can't trade on a market, but it completely diluted the value that I had there, because now people were paying half of what I paid for my stuff. And like, I'm an early supporter, and there was no recognition about that. Like, I think it would have been a great time during this to talk about like the different business models, and like, hey, as you're starting up there and you're trying to get recognized in the space, what were some of the issues there? We heard about this. Where some of the original supporters were very upset about this. Didn't talk about that. Didn't talk about like the Yoda, and the issue with the Yoda, where basically, because it was blind box and there's no marketplace, people just had to spend $40 on a blind box trying to get all of the ones necessary just to get a Yoda. And I mean, I saw one person who was like, yo, I spent $4,000 trying to get this set, and I still haven't gotten it yet. And I have no idea if I need to spend another $4,000. Like, this is where I'm saying, okay, if you want to have hard-hitting journalism, that's fine, right? But like, do it to both sides. Like, ask these tough questions. And I would have loved to hear Will's response on that, because, like I said, extremely well polished. And I would have loved, as someone who holds Cryptoys and was impacted by that, his response, right? But none of these types of questions, there was not a single question that I could look to and I say, that was a tough question for Cryptoys. And I think that is where a lot of people took issue with this interview and saying, it seemed like an attack on VeVe, an attack on David. And I can imagine as the CEO, like being like what's happening here? And to Will's credit, again, throughout this entire interview, he continues to, when he's thrown these softballs where he could have totally gone on the offensive, he doesn't. He like is highly complimentary of VeVe. Very, very impressed with that, right? Let's see. This is the other thing that I need to put into context, because a lot of people, when she talks about Omi in the interview, there's still some regulatory uncertainty regarding the token. There is, and I wish that he could have said that. So like, are there things that David could have done better in his response? Absolutely. But again, if you're understanding this space, also understanding that like, hey, I can't ask a lot about this token, because like, there's not a lot that they can really go into on certain things about price point. Now he can kind of start talking about utility. Like, there's some things, but I'm sure that he's talking to attorneys, and the attorneys are like, you got to be super careful. And, that's where it can be very, if I'm the CEO and I have any concerns that I might slip up on something, what could have been said is, because of the regulatory uncertainty on certain things, talking about the token could, on live interviews, could prove like not so favorable for us. And so honestly, I like, if you want to ask some questions, right, like we can table that, and then we can come back with like a formal response and do it that way, so that he's not concerned about any slip ups there, right? Another tough question to season 3 OG's point is, how many of each product do you actually have? Like, do we know the full amount of like each thing? And if not, like, why? Like, because I remember trying to ask, like, as I was buying the Star Wars stuff, I was like, well, how many is there? And he wouldn't give an answer, right? So that would have been a tough question. So again, I'm trying to provide some perspective, like on things that as I watched this, I was wondering why that didn't happen. Again, in the context of, you're saying you're a hard-hitting journalist and you're going to ask the tough questions, which she asked some tough questions, but it seemed very one-sided. And then all of these questions to Will were softballs, like no tough questions there. And that's where people were like, were you paid by someone? Because it does come off as like you have an agenda, or you're attacking these things. Again, I don't think she had an agenda, and I don't know why. And that's why I would have liked to have that Twitter space to ask some of these things, because I think she could have provided her insight on this, and this is just my opinion on it, right? And so she definitely could provide additional context, which would have been helpful. Appreciate you, Fam Bam. Okay. And I will say this, like, and David kind of touched on it, right? He talked about the token in the community. This is another opportunity that David could have had to be like, look, actually the token did a lot for us. For you entrepreneurs who are out there, like we launched the token and a lot of people actually found VeVe through the token. And so that brought a lot of users, you know, to our platform that we probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So there were some missed opportunities there. So some of these tough questions could have provided some great opportunities to really expound on this. Okay. Corporate dirty tricks, Mona and her gang. See, Pink Panther, I don't agree. I don't think that I truly, from every interaction I've had with Mona, I don't think that this was we're out here to get VeVe. I don't see it like that. And we don't know the financial stability right now of Cryptoys or how much income that they have, but they do have, you know, like Mattel has purchased, I believe, an equity stake in them. So they do have funds that they could access as they continue to grow. And look, most businesses like run in the negative for the first 3 years. So I like, even though I'm frustrated with some of the Cryptoys things, like I really hope that they succeed. And I'm very interested to see kind of what their digital toy experience is like. I have to point this out. And this is something that I people again blame VeVe for being on Bit4X and we need additional exchanges. Guys, there's no exchange that's safe. Not Coinbase, not Binance. None of them are. FTX was the second largest in the entire world, and it fell. So your money is not safe on an exchange. And if anything, if I can like beat anything into you guys, if you're gonna own a token, please, there's a lot of YouTube videos on how to get a non-custodial wallet, whether it's Trust Wallet, MetaMask. There's a lot out there now. But learn to get on those exchanges, do whatever trading you need to do, and then get it off. I actually brought some of my really close buddies into OMI, and a couple of years ago, both of them a couple of years ago, and they'd been sitting on Bit4X, no joke. And like 3 weeks ago, I was like, hey, you guys still have your funds on the exchange? I'm like, you need to get these funds off there. And so I sat through and I walked them through how to get a MetaMask, and it's a lot of work, but please do the homework and do this, because there is no exchange that's safe. I just want to point that out. So here's some of the comments or how people feel, right? Omi Child saying she targeted and drove the conversation in a way that it shouldn't have gone. It wasn't even a one-on-one. There were other companies in the discussion. And I would just say, I can understand people's perspective as they watch this, that it did feel like it was very much one-sided towards like attacking the token model. And then because Cryptoys didn't have a token model, like the questions, there weren't a lot of tough questions there. So let's see. Man, you guys just chatted a lot. Let's see. So that's not true, Brian. Like I interviewed David on there, and I feel like I asked some great questions and some tough questions about what happens if VeVe goes down, and following through on that, and being like, you talked about the artists and what would happen to the artist NFTs, but what about the big IP? That's what a lot of people have come onto this platform for. And that's one of the things you tout is this big IP. What would happen there? Like, so I don't mind tough questions. I feel like I asked some, but David has definitely done some AMAs like recently. So I agree here. Jojo, that I hopefully Bit4X situation is not a Mt. Gox one. That would not be good. Who's the main Don for OMI? I would say Foster Hilt is now. He is the community manager for OMI, so a lot of the OMI communication runs through him. Shout out to you, Brandon. I really appreciate Brandon. You're very calm and composed in a lot of your responses as people tweet out, and there's a lot of frustration. I really enjoyed reading some of your responses there. So David is the head honcho in licensing. Let's see. We're going to get to, okay, well, let's get back to some of this. see. So, like I said before, Andrew, who's someone that said that he used to work for Animal Brands or something, he has a pretty solid follow-up question right after Will's response here. So let's kind of get to this. We're going to get here.
If you're 45 years old or you're 8 years old, you can enjoy the Cryptoys experience in different ways. So that was just our own choice in that matter.
Andrew, I know you probably, before I ask my next question, you probably have a question here too. I want to give you the time. We have about 5 minutes here. I want to give you an opportunity to ask about these two models as well.
Got it. That makes sense. So you mentioned earlier, David, go find people you can trust, right? That will provide you with good advice. So for those out there that may be younger, or they're an entrepreneur, or they're trying to do that startup and they're trying to find the right advisor or the right person to trust, how do you know who the right person to trust is? Like, what are, when it comes to this space? Because I understand on the regulatory side, I've talked to founders that have spent literally millions trying to get clarity. They can't get clarity depending on the jurisdiction. It's been really frustrating for them. So how do you go select that maybe more senior person, that more experienced person, that person you can trust to advise you if you're looking to enter this space? What advice would you give there to know that that person is trustworthy and their advice is advice that you should take?
So again, like I feel like he asked a great question, and he did provide a little bit of context, right? He's like, I've spoken with companies that have spent millions trying to get regulatory clarity on all of this. And so that's one of the things that when she was like, hey, David, with everything you know now, like, would you do it the same? And people were frustrated when David was like, they're like, oh, David said that he wouldn't do the token again, and like Omi's a rug. And I'm like, guys, I mean, again, like there's a lot of projects out there who have spent millions of dollars trying to figure out if their token is a security, or if they do certain things. Maybe their token's not a security now, but if they do this, does that make it a security? Well, what if they do this? If they add this utility, does that make it a security? Like, there's so much things. It's like there's a lot that still needs to be discovered there. So I really appreciated this comment. And again, in the context of they're trying to like inform new entrepreneurs, what a solid question there. Really appreciated that. And this is a great point, Atomic. Look, because VeVe is the leader, they've been around longer. They're going to get tougher questions because they've had more time to have more pitfalls and issues there. So like that's a great point. I really like this comment. Hopefully he will embrace opportunity and continue to set the pace. I just hope that there is more regulatory clarity, and we're getting some. That lawsuit with Ripple really has set the stage for like once tokens are traded on the secondary market, and are they considered securities? I would argue based on that ruling that no, they're not. There still needs to be more clarity because the judge basically, she differentiated between secondary market buyers and I cannot remember the term she used, but she compared the term of this group of people who bought the token, Ripple token, on the secondary market to secondary market purchasers. But then she said, I'm not going to address secondary market purchasers directly because that wasn't part of the lawsuit. But everything that I've read, the legal opinions that I've read on all of that, basically really like, I mean, yeah, like this really opens the door that all a company now has to do is then sue the SEC or during a lawsuit, bring up as precedent, right, what she has said here, and that she compared those holders to secondary market holders. And then we have clarity that, look, you might do a token raise, and that might be considered a security at the time of the raise. Now, if you do that raise and it's not within U.S. jurisdiction or to U.S. customers, then that doesn't count as a security. The SEC would consider it a security, but because it's not touching U.S. people, then they're not in. The SEC can't go after them for that. And then once those tokens start trading on the secondary market, bam, it's not a security anymore. And the space is so truly waiting for that lawsuit to happen to finalize that clarity. And so I think until that happens, David is in a tough spot on the things that he can really even talk about with the token, because in these prior lawsuits, right, if he talks about price in any way, if he talks about certain things, then that can be considered like as part of this security, and and promising returns or anything like that. So, but Atomic, I really like that comment. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the comments that you guys have had so far. Tino, that's fair, right? If we're talking about OMI, a lot of your things in your portfolio weren't on an exchange that just went down. I feel like OMI actually had some real positive momentum and things were going up, and then this happened, and that's frustrating. Appreciate you, VeVe Zombie. Again, I spent a lot of time looking at this, and I'm trying to be fair on anything. And please point out if at any point in time you guys feel like I'm not being fair in my assessment of what I've seen happen in the interview. I'm not familiar with Andrew Wall, but again, in this interview, I was highly impressed with him. And yeah, he has a lot of experience with fungible tokens, right? With Illuvium. And I'm sure that when he's talking about companies that have spent millions trying to get clarity, Illuvium's probably one of them. I haven't heard the CEOs of a lot of the projects I'm in talk about the token at all. So, yeah, I think it would have been great to see tough questions asked of both sides, and I didn't see that in the interview, and that was really frustrating. And T Beast, man, again, my heart goes out to anyone who lost money on that exchange. So much sympathy and empathy. I've lost money in this space. This is not a friendly space. It's not, and I'm really hoping and I believe. And as I look to invest in projects, I'm looking at projects that truly are trying to make things better, make it more user-friendly, to draw in people to this space, right? And protect people from this. But right now, I mean, all we got are exchanges, and there's a lot of funny business that exchanges can do, and companies that have their tokens on there can have no idea that that's happening. I agree with this. And FamMem, we're going to get into this conversation with certain people because there is a real big question that she asks here that I feel like I was blown away by the question. Honestly, we'll get to that in just a second. So let's get back into some of these. Again, so I mean, just another to reiterate where I just felt like the token was harped on, again and again and again. And it just seemed like this attack, which, again, I've already said David could have responded and provided some of the reasons. There's a lot of reasons that we're starting to see the OMI utility program, right, be integrated into the VeVe app. I have the soft staking is what I call it or term it, right, where I have 10 million OMI on the VeVe web wallet. And I'm going to get bronze tickets for that. And I'm also getting MCP points. I'm able to use my MCP points now. I'm really excited, literally in the next month for the announcement on what these bronze tickets are going to do. There's going to be the OMI to NFT. There's a lot of integrations there that I feel like he could have talked about. But again, he might be concerned until this is all set in stone to talk about that. So, but yeah, so here we go again, one more time with just because David talks about the complexities of the business and scaling, and so here he is talking about there's a lot of complexities with all of this, and you have to deal with HR, you have to deal with multinational, as a multinational corporation, all of the different laws with so many things, right? And instead of asking Will, right, or going to Will about that, then we get this again. And it begs the question as to what is happening? What is happening?
What jurisdiction? We're talking about taxations. We're talking about HR, contractors, employment laws, and privacy data, and so on. There's many moving parts rather than just one specific section.
David, so why make it even more complicated with tokens? I just want to get to the bottom of this with you and Will. Can this be done without tokens?
David already answered that question. He said yes. So then again, that's where I do feel like people are being like, what is going on? He's answered the question. He said yes. Now, again, David could have expounded on, yes, you can do this without tokens. you can see that Will with Cryptoys has done it without fungible tokens. But there's a lot of benefits that we feel, well, two things, right? Like before when we launched this, there was no issues or concerns about regulatory clarity. There are now. So anyone coming into this space, they're going to have to be aware of that. And there's still some lack of regulatory clarity. However, we're working through that, and we believe that there are some benefits here of the token. So he could have done that, but to ask this like this many times when he's answered the question, that's where people start saying, okay, it does seem like there's an agenda, or that there's this gang, here. I don't believe that that's what it was at all, but I can see why people perceived it as such, right? Yeah. There's another time where she kind of talks about that. So now to Mona's credit, right? Like, so here around this with the token model, let's see if I can get here, and let's see.
You don't have a token
necessary on how to do it. David, very astutely said, there's different regulations depending on where the company's headquartered and located. There's a lot of moving parts here, and those laws are changing on a month-to-month basis. It's hard to keep up with all this stuff. So yeah, so us, there's not a right or wrong approach. There's just a bunch of different ways to, as you would say in your tweet, Mona, bake a cake.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody's baking. The mission is to bake a cake, but the recipes are different. But Will, do tell us a little bit. I mean, I know the same person who asked me about their memorabilia business, and they want to add that digital layer. They're listening right now. When it comes to that cash flow and raising money, enlighten them about how it's possible if you don't have a token-based model.
So this is a great question, right? So she does ask, like, okay, if you don't have a token-based model, like, how do you do that? So then Will does kind of talk about the private equity, but like I said, she could have then followed up with like, well, what are the cons to private equity? David, what are the pros to the token raise? And dug into that for these entrepreneurs. Like, I feel like that would have been a very useful and helpful question to follow up with. And again, like that could have been a tougher question for Will that wasn't presented. And so when we talk about to VeVe Fan Bam's point, right, about like maybe her research was like talking to a lot of people. Let's just listen to this next little part here, because I was kind of surprised by this question. Let's see.
Ownership aspect of it through the token.
Right.
Same person who asked me about.
So for us, we kind of boiled it down to what are the essential components of blockchain that we need to integrate into the product, and just we focused around that. For us, it was just focusing around the toys and the NFT component of it, and then exploring if it makes sense to do a fungible token down the line and what regulations are necessary on how to do it. David, very astutely said, there's different regulations depending on where the company's headquartered and located. There's a lot of moving parts here, and those laws are changing on a month-to-month basis. It's hard to keep up with all this stuff. So yeah, so us, there's not a right or wrong approach. There's just a bunch of different ways to, as you would say in your tweet, Mona, bake a cake.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody's baking. The mission is to bake a cake, but the recipes are different. But Will, do tell us a little bit. I mean, I know the same person who asked me about their memorabilia business, and they want to add that digital layer. They're listening right now. When it comes to that cash flow and raising money, enlighten them about how it's possible if you don't have
establish our initial partnerships and technology, and then build out from there.
Here's the question.
So would you say, what about the ownership aspect of it through the token? How does ownership work with the collectibles if there is no token, if that makes sense?
This is where I have to say that this is where I don't feel like the research was done there. This question, if you've done the research, doesn't make sense to me. The token, you've already talked about the fact that like you don't need a token, a fungible token to operate in this space, right? You can do it without it. Then like what's the question? If there's no token, how does the ownership work? Like it's on the blockchain. You've purchased it. That to me was I was shocked by that question, because I don't think that question should have ever existed. You talk about like, hey, like how does the ownership work? But like if there's no token, I don't have an answer for that. I'd love to hear kind of people's thoughts on that. But this is where, as I'm watching the whole thing, right, and I'm trying to take it all in its entirety, where she said that she's done the work, she's studied for 3 days, and you know, she's asking these questions. A lot of the tough questions are towards VeVe, which is fine, but they're kind of harping on the same thing about the token. But then she's asking about, you know, this somehow with no token, with no fungible token, how does ownership work? That to me says that was not enough research done. And at this level, when you're asking these type of things, that starts to, people see that and be like, when I put that and add that to the rest of the things, I have questions, and that's what I've had so far. And VeVe Fandom, we're still going to get to like another question that I feel like, look, I think I think Coinbase is going to win that about like some of the staking things. If Jojo, that's what you're talking about in January, the judge came across as very pro Coinbase in you know, using a lot of Coinbase's arguments in her response to the SEC. It was very interesting. So this is Slider's perspective, and I agree, right? You came to watch this roundtable. Now, Mona couldn't have helped the fact that Luca couldn't make it, and maybe this would have changed the entire dynamic. You have to be thoughtful that could have happened, right? Yeah, I agree that this wasn't like necessarily roundtable discussion in a lot of ways, but again, like if she's trying to find answers for her audience, I'm fine with that. And yeah, this is where people start to say, like, I don't feel like if you're saying ethical, like, I don't know if ethical is the right word, but like, this seemed very one-sided in questioning, and it didn't seem like you were asking tough questions to both. And is that ethical? And I don't like that term. I don't like that term. Is that when you're reporting on something, right, you're coming at it with no agenda and you're just asking questions, and they can be tough questions. And then if you're saying, hey, I'm going to ask the tough questions, it should be to both. It should be to both. And I didn't see that at all. I like this. And Dan, I agree. This would have been great, right? Like we've had to pivot a lot because of regulatory changes and internal issues. Rest assured, we will never abandon the token. Now, he's answered that before. When I interviewed him, I'm very, very cautious about asking any founder about the token, especially on live TV. And all I said, I was like, hey, there's a lot of people who are concerned about OMI. Can you just say something to them, right? So that I opened up the door to what he felt comfortable being able to say. And he absolutely talked about like that the token is very much a part of this ecosystem. So, I mean, could he have said this again? Yes. And do I expect that everyone's going to watch my channel compared to like other channels? No, I get that. So fair point taken. And hopefully they can take that back and be like, look, like any chance that we get to just assure the community that like the OMI token is very much integrated into our ecosystem, that would have been great, right? So I don't disagree there. Shout out to you, Jimbo Lilingo. Good to see ya. Ryan, look, these are some questions. That's fair, right? Like on OTC, like what happened there. Now, I will point out, to be fair, right, that OTC, he might not be in the agreement, have been able to talk about it. That could have been part of it. The gem hacks, I mean, I think that they kind of talked about the gem hacks, right? And that also is tied up with like legal authorities. And I can assure you that when there's investigations happening in any way with law enforcement, you can't talk about it. You cannot talk about it because it might it might hurt the investigation in a lot of ways. So there's that release of lower mints when they said it wouldn't happen. I think that that's a great question. So I'm not opposed to tough questions, and I like these, and it's good. It's good for that. So okay, but allowing us to buy on Bitforex, that I take issue with. People do need to take some ownership of this. I've been impacted. I've been rugged, And I've just been like, I made that decision and I've had to learn. And this is where VeVe has said, not VeVe, Ecomi has said many times, like, please don't keep your tokens on exchanges. Let me pause there, because then I've heard people say, well, if Ecomi keeps saying, don't keep your tokens on exchanges, then why are they allowing or saying it's okay to have the OMI token on the VeVe web app, right? Isn't that kind of the same thing? And I'll just say this from my perspective. Look, if VeVe goes down, the OMI token's worth nothing. So that's why I personally am fine sending my OMI over there. Now, I don't have all of my OMI on there, but I don't have any OMI on exchanges. But the funny thing is, I did have some tokens on KuCoin, and KuCoin had told me, hey, like, you know, you're gonna have to KYC, and if you don't, you're not gonna have access to your tokens. So it's not the same situation, but obviously, like with KYC at KuCoin, like if you're US based, like you're excluded there. And I freaking forgot, and my tokens are locked up there, right? And that's on me. I take ownership of that. And I can empathize with people, but again, I really try to nudge people to say, the sooner that you take ownership of the fact that you also had a very significant role in the fact that your tokens were there. There are YouTube videos. There's a lot of things that people could, like Metamoto said, people have been using Bit4X for 5 years. Now, there's some people, and there are some, I would say, people who are like extreme outliers, right? Several standard deviations from the mean, where like I had just moved it on there and I was gonna like, or I just had moved funds over there. I bought OMI, and literally before I could take it off, like this happened. I don't like that's I got nothing on that. That's terrible. Then that could have happened anywhere. I personally just use a decentralized exchange. It is a little bit more expensive, but then I don't ever run into those issues. Will OMI to NFT only for purchasing drop, or can be used for marketplace as well? I actually believe, Kong, that to start out, OMI to NFT is going to be only for the secondary market there, because if it's OMI to the store, right, or just on the drop, basically VeVe is going to have to take some of those tokens and sell them right back to cash out, because they have to pay their licensors there. Where if it's on the secondary market, they're already taking that fee, and there's a portion they can charge a little bit extra and burn some of that OMI. So now there might be some things like VeVe IP that they could list, or maybe they cut a deal with one of their IPs where they're saying, hey, you know, you'll only get funds from the secondary market and to do this. But yeah, I would say initially marketplace, and then potentially in certain circumstances, but I would say it's not going to be like a very common thing where you can do it on the drop. Let's see. He should have cut his feed. No, see, that wouldn't look good. Like, that's funny, right? But honestly, sometimes you got to stand there and face the tough questions. And like I pointed out, I do feel like there are certain instances where he could have expounded on certain things. And good guy, Will. Dude, I feel like Will came away when people were like, oh, this was a very good interview for Cryptoys. I have to agree. I mean, I do think that Will came across as very, like I said, polished. He was very respectful to VeVe throughout. He was highly complimentary of VeVe. And he makes a great point that it's just like a rising tide lifts all boats. And we need competition. We need Cryptoys. For people who are just like only VeVe, like, guys, we need solid companies. I really hope Cryptoys succeeds, right? I still am upset about that whole thing that, you know, about the buy one, get one. But that was a business decision, and like, I can be upset, but like, I still hope that they succeed. Like, I truly do. And I think that Will gets that. And so again, I got nothing but mad props for him. Let's see. Yeah, like, this is interesting because she does interview a lot of companies that a lot of Web3 projects that have tokens. And to my understanding, I haven't seen her ever ask the question of tokens to any of these other projects, like, do you need tokens? And Maybe she will. Maybe she will in the future. Wow, that's an excellent entry price. I got a little bit at that point, but I bought when it bounced up and things, just timing on when I had extra funds. So I'm just kind of going through some of these comments here. Yeah, like it was supposed to be a roundtable, and I think that's where it could have been like, hey, I'm going to open this up to both of you. But a lot of times it was like, I'm just only asking David, and sometimes because the question really only pertained to David. And I think that she had some of these questions lined up, and like some of these could have absolutely been relevant to Pudgy Penguins. So like definitely have to give her the benefit of the doubt on some of that, right? I agree. Look, Jake brings up a good point. Like she definitely could have gone even more aggressive on certain things with missed timelines, that credit card hack, some influencers buying discounted gems and things. Fair point, Jake. So like, could she have gone harder? Absolutely, and she didn't, right? My point is that she did go hard on David, and not on Will, and that if you're trying to be fair, or like not ethical, I don't know, like I don't know. I'm trying to think still of a better word than ethical, but like I don't feel like it makes sense for you to only ask the tough questions on one project and then just lob softballs to the other project. Doesn't paint you in a very good light when you're saying like, hey, I'm just here, I'm just a journalist, and I'm just trying to ask the tough questions. And she said that, right? She's there to ask the tough questions. I didn't see the tough questions for Will. What's up, Liam? This is a good point, Tally Boy, and I was going to bring this up. Will, in one of his responses, and I was surprised that there wasn't a follow-up here, because he did say, we will look into the future about if it makes sense for us to have a fungible token. Why not interrupt there, or even just wait until the response was done and be like, hold on just a second, okay? So we've seen some of the pitfalls, like, and I've grilled David on this, like, what are the benefits that you see of a fungible token? Like, why are you even potentially considering that in the future? Right? Notes there. I just hadn't hit. No, I mean, look, Pink Panther, David was gracious enough to come on my channel. I've got like almost 700 followers, right? Like, this is what I love in general about the Web3 space is, now I don't know Luca personally, and I don't know, right? And maybe he would have just never, but I don't think that he would have told Mona that he was going to come if he wasn't going to come. So, and again, like, I'm not here to, like, I like Mona, right? And I always try, and in the recent past, right, I let my emotions take the best of me. I didn't necessarily personally attack anyone, but I definitely got into it, right, on Twitter. And I apologize for that. And I kind of like deleted those comments and stuff. But guys, one thing, please, this is the second thing that I would try to drill into people here, right? We can be frustrated with how something went down. That the sooner that we can stop attacking the person or trying to take these cheap shots and really just like address the argument. And that's what I'm trying to do here. The more we can do that and be respectful, right? Then there can be this very helpful dialogue that helps the space grow as a whole, right? I don't like when people attack David. I don't like when people attack Mona. Like, I really like Mona. Again, I'm trying to dissect this interview and bring up the things that I felt like were disconnects for me here. Look, like, when you're saying be honest, I'll just say this, right? And I got caught up, like, I had made some like pretty moon boyish predictions on the Omi token, which Wes reminds me of constantly. Again, but it was under the expectation or assumption that there would have been massive burns that just haven't happened there, right? But there's a balance here, Guy, with people talking about tokens. Rain constantly says this is what he believes it could go to, not that it should go to, not that it will go to that, but could it go to that? And I'll just say this. There are very few crypto YouTubers that I've come across that have literally purchased at the bottom or near the bottom, right, of certain tokens and experienced 100 to like 500 X's. And Crypto Rain is one of those. So for me, I at least pay some heed to like why he might be saying that. Now, you don't have to agree with that, and that is fine, right? And I've never seen Rain be like, I'm holding out until a $200 billion market cap. I don't think that he's ever said that, but he says, I think it could get to that. And so constantly we talk about diversification. Like I said, because like I said, I was in that group of like a moon boyish prediction. And I still think the token could do very well. But there's a lot that needs to happen for it to get to those prices. And I'm going to be selling on the way up. And I talk about, please don't get too greedy. Last bull cycle, I fell prey to that. I was like, it's going to go up. It's going to go up. And so I held. And then the token price dropped. And I was like, oh, but it'll go back up. And then it didn't. And I was like, I'm going to hold on a little bit longer. And like just held to the bottom. Right. And definitely did not make near as much money as I could have. And so I talk about having price points as tokens are going up. But then for me, I always will save, no matter how much I've sold, there will always be like about a 10% moon bag for me so that I can get that exposure in case it does just go crazy. But you don't have to agree with their predictions and things. And you're saying misleading people. These are their thoughts. And please, people, do your own research and make your own decisions at the end of the day. Please hold yourself responsible for the actions that you take. We say that this isn't financial advice, and all we're doing is providing context in our research and things. But at the end of the day, it's you who pushes the buy button or the sell button. Please take ownership of that. Let's look at this. I'm not always on Spaces. Some of the things did not make sense. We'll send you a DM. Okay, Mask. Yeah, I appreciate that. Please do. If there's something that didn't make sense here, I'm looking in my DMs. I don't see anything, Mask. So if you want to expound here on things that I'm saying maybe that didn't make sense, that'd be great. There's been many. Okay. I'll say this, Jake. I'm not going to argue that VeVe hasn't had a lot of missteps. They have, and that comes with the territory of being the first in the space. And we're going to jump to that, right? Because I do kind of want to start wrapping these things up. I've appreciated these comments so far. Let's real quick, Pink Panther. It's not about like it's a dirty business, but when you come at VeVe, better come correct. Fair point. When you come at anyone, you should be correct, right? Okay, so I want to get back to VeVe Fan Bam's kind of comment, right? This was I don't know. Like I'm gonna jump to this. Hopefully, I could do a better job of. I tried to write down these timestamps. So we're going to get it right here. And let's play this.
Now that will be a sector that will be focusing how we can do that. We have our own metaverse coming where your collectible is going to be living within that and how you...
Hold on just a second.
On our platform. Well, number one.
See, my timestamps are off.
You need to see all these
about money at the end of the day, and they won't hesitate to get up and go to the next Web3 platform. So my question to you is, why you? Why should they choose VeVe? How do you keep them on your platform?
Okay, so sorry, this was not the one I was thinking about. This is another one, but this is a great question. I like this question, and it's important, right? I mean, and I feel like David does a pretty solid job, right? First is saying like, because she's talking about the Disney Fortnite thing, and how can this impact VeVe, and what happens if Disney leaves, right? Like, and every business has to do what I call stress testing, right, of their balance sheet, and saying, hey, if XYZ company leaves, like what happens to our earnings? Where are we at here, right? And then like what kind of relationship is there a probability of that happening? And they stress test their balance sheet, and they also have kind of contingency plans of how they pivot if something like that were to happen. And one of the things that David says in his answer was great, right? He's like, why do they stick with us? Is because we continue to innovate. We continue to do these things, right? And in a lot of ways, like they were the first one to like do fidgetals. Like and well, if you haven't seen Mr. MC1's tweet where he kind of outlines a lot that VeVe has done in the fidgetal space, wow, it's a great tweet. So anyways, sorry guys, this is it's frustrating. We're just gonna go straight to this here. Okay. All right, let's try this.
You know, one day we will see people wearing wearable devices and able to see digital collectible throughout their homes. And Apple Provision have brought that technology to us, and you know that will be a sector that will be focusing how we can do that. We have our own metaverse coming, where your collectible is going to be living within that, and how you you know how you will be decorating that room and giving that experience throughout.
Which, by the way, means you would have to get people to care about AR to come in and do that. But
okay, no, I mean, yeah, they definitely will be doing that. But like, look, Apple and all of these other companies that are Samsung that are doing these AR goggles and VR goggles, they're doing the heavy lifting. And the thing is, again, like we're already seeing. We're seeing this transition. Will talks about this transition into digital, and AR is part of that movement. So like that to me, that seemed like an off comment where it was just like, and then maybe David could have responded. I don't think, you know, she gave him the chance or anything, but if you research this space and understand this space, you realize that this is happening. Like the AR, VR stuff, like that is happening, and it's going to be the companies like Apple and Samsung, right, that are bringing the masses. But then on top of that, just my personal experience, right? Like I had never really used AR before VeVe. And like I came in and I was just like, you know, really I was excited about first like appearance on the blockchain. That's what really drew me in. I love that concept of digital ownership there. But honestly, like the AR thing, I've come to love. I love taking pictures with my stuff. Like I remember one of my first videos of like the ghost trap and doing that, like, and sharing that right on Facebook, and people were like, "Yo, what is that?" Right? Like, so yeah, I was a little bit perplexed by that comment. But here comes the question.
Here is my this is a Mona question. When I look at VeVe, there is so much potential and there's so much opportunity, but I still can't put my finger on what VeVe's direction is, to be honest with you. Is when you look in the future, is VeVe a marketplace for digital collectibles? Is it you know, Will is going more toward an interactive, playable features and experiences? When I look at Will's model, I see exactly the direction he's going. But when I look at VeVe, I am a little puzzled. Can you bring some clarity as to what the direction is? What because at the end of the day, we can only focus as business owners. I'm a business owner. We get to focus on one or maybe two things. So what is that?
Okay, look, can we just see the reaction here? So maybe as a small business owner, when you're first starting, you can only focus on one to two things. But like as an international company, you got to be like, as the CEO, like, and the direction of VeVe, like there's a lot of directions that you're doing, and look at, not that I'm comparing VeVe to Apple but like I'm just using a major corporation, right? That I think that VeVe is working to grow towards, and again, they have employees in multiple countries. They've been growing, like their revenue is pretty substantial, right? Like, and David talks about Amazon, right? And initially Amazon, like their whole goal was just to honestly like sell things on the internet, right? Kind of like an internet store, but they've pivoted since then. There's a lot that they're doing, and one of their biggest business segments now is Amazon Web Services. And so, but this goes back all the way to VeVe Fanbam's point, right, about like the research there. You can go directly to VeVe's webpage, and it talks all about what VeVe is. And David, in like every single interview he's ever done, talks about being the premier marketplace for premium digital collectibles. That's the goal. And then bringing as many IP to that as possible. Then building off of that, right? Getting people to experience AR, right? And that they're building this VeVe-verse. If you've had 3 days to research these companies, I don't know how that you don't understand, or you couldn't tell what the direction is. Now, let me take a step back, and I'll say one thing, and this is a fair criticism of VeVe. VeVe used to have a roadmap. They don't have a roadmap that people can see and be like, okay, what are our goals? Where are we headed from here? So if she was looking for a roadmap, and when she didn't see that, just stopped there, okay, I don't feel like that's fair. Like the research shouldn't have stopped, right? Because again, I think it was Boodle. Um, hopefully you can hear me now, guys. Let me know. Geez, I have no idea what's happened. Please in the comments. I'll wait because I know that there's a bit of a delay. Let me know if you can hear me. And you can even see I rushed like with my doctor. Oh, okay. I'm back, guys. I'm sorry. I have no idea. All of a sudden, my laptop is not picking up uh, things. And let's see if it might let me come back in now. Let's see if I can go back on my laptop here. There we go. All right. There we go. Jeez, that's never happened before, and it's weird because my laptop still even shows that I can't connect to the internet. So Sorry about that, guys. Wow, that's never happened before. I don't know where I got cut off, but one of the things that was a great point. Lost video. I'm seeing all these comments. So where I was basically, I was perplexed by the question where she said that she didn't know where VeVe was headed because all of the information is there. And so I feel like it does damage the credibility of it, like in that moment, because if you've done 3 days worth of research, how can you not see where that direction is? So that was frustrating. Yeah, I was frozen. I hope I was frozen like some cool pose, right? Where I was just like, anyways, that'd be great if someone got a screenshot. So I appreciate that. Oh geez. All right. Thanks everyone. So, all right, let's see what I'm almost done here with just kind of, let's see. Okay. Yeah. Then, the last question I kind of want to get to, because we've kind of been going for a while, right? I mean, I'll just touch on, she talks about the physical product bringing people to digital. And she's like, Will has this, but like, she wasn't aware of, look, we gotta show this. All right, let's try this. I think Mr. MC1 did a great job kind of outlining all of the digital or physical experiences that VeVe has done, and there are a lot. So again, it's like, where's the research there? Like it's missing. This should have been covered, and it wasn't, and that's disappointing. Because again, I do like Metamona, but I feel like there's one more segment that I'm going to cover, and then I'll kind of summarize things here. So, and thanks for staying with me, guys, while I was frozen. I really appreciate that. I was like, look, I'm going to come back. There should be like 2 people. Okay, the last one was, let's see. All right, here. So they're kind of wrapping things up, and Mona wants to touch on one last question. Okay, this to me, I was really surprised by this question. I mean, it's fair, right? Like the user base has shrunk. That's fine. Like, and you can point that out. But like to say it's not where it should be, like, is where should it be? Is there someone who can tell us like what the user base should be with this? Because let's talk about all of the other NFT projects that are substantially down from all-time highs, and all of the interactions that they have compared to beforehand, right? Like, but she wants to talk about major IP. Fine, right? Like, she talked earlier. She's like, where are all the Disney people? And I was like, well, where are all of this is still a nascent space. Like most people don't even know this exists. But however, the Golden Moments actually brought in a lot of Disney fans, right? And they were excited, and then things were going up. And then as the market turned and price went down, a lot of people bailed, right? But Will Cryptoys also has the IP, and like, could she have asked like, hey, Will, like, how's your user base doing? And like, are you concerned that like the majority of your user base actually came from VeVe? VeVe introduced, like, got people excited about digital collectibles, and then migrated over to Cryptoys, because like that was my experience, right? I got into Cryptoys because I knew VeVe and I was very comfortable with that, right? And it, like, this is saying like that there's some expected like user base at this point in time, and to me that this is, if I was to say like, was there any like not fair question that doesn't make sense to me, I would say this would be the one where I was like, what's the user base supposed to be at this point in time? And then why aren't you asking something similar to Will? I mean, and being like, okay, like, Will, like, are you selling out your stuff, or what's your concerns here? You have major IP too. What are you seeing? Right? Again, that equity in the questions. Blown away by that question. Like, again, that was the one that at the end of the interview, that's what was asked, and I was just like, I mean, what do you say? Like, we are continually working to bring new users into the space. Now, granted, this is a time where David could have shined and said, look, and explained all of that. So there's that argument, right? That David could have done that. And I don't feel like he necessarily did to that point. But why aren't these questions being asked? So as I try to summarize everything, ladies and gentlemen, I do feel like for some reason, Mona really focused on that token thing. She was like, but I haven't seen her do that with any other project that has tokens tied to it. So that seems off if you're trying to get answers for people, because that's very important. There are going to be people on cornucopias that have, you know, potentially tokens on an exchange, or actually, like, I don't even know if cornucopias, I don't know if they have it. I've always just bought it from the DEX, but like, there are other projects like Illuvium that do have it on an exchange, right? Is she asking those questions? I haven't seen it. No, she might have, but I think that I would expect that more often if she's trying to inform a user base. And this is where someone brought up a good point. This is a good point, Atomic. I like your points, Atomic, so far. It's not that the interviewer can't see, right? She can't see what VeVe's thing is. It's about drawing out information for the audience, including those who haven't seen prior interviews. That's fine. But she did point out what she saw with Cryptoys vision and where they were headed, right? So she did it for one, but then not for the other. So again, if we're trying to be, you know, hard-hitting journalism and we're asking the tough questions, why are you asking that to one and then literally giving the answer for the other one? And even if instead of just like letting that other individual give their explanation. So interesting. There's a lot of comments here about discussions about OMI token. I'm not going to get into that. You know, I did that little blurb there, but I mean, the whole topic of, let's see, it was around. So I'm going to touch on Mask, because Mask was talking, you know, that like there were some things that I might have missed. So roundtable discussion, she turned it into a VeVe interview. She said in Spaces she had only 2 topics she wanted to talk about and send them over to VeVe since they asked for it. So they asked for the questions ahead of time. Is that what you're saying, Mask? And then I swear I saw another one. She said this all in Spaces a couple of days before the interview that she had. Okay. I think my point still stands, though, Mask. Like, if you're going to ask these questions to VeVe, which, if you've heard me throughout this interview, I don't think that, with the exception of that last question, I really had like an issue with. And it was more just like the way it was framed. I think if she could have been like, hey, we've seen a decline in the user base, and there is this big IP. Can you speak to that? You know, like, one of the things that you talk about is being able to bring this IP on. I don't feel like that was fair. But again, Mass, like, and everyone, the same questions were not asked. And if it's a roundtable in general, it's an open discussion, right? Even if it's with 2 people and you're having both people answer the same questions, that did not happen. That did not happen here. There were some times where they asked it, but it was like the softball questions, or she would ask David the hardball, and then she would make a comment that kind of like laid it up for Will going forward there. And so, I mean, these are my observations. Again, I really like Metamona. I hope she continues to do very well in this space, and I believe that she will. But from my perspective, I can see why a lot of people kind of got up in arms about watching this interview and feeling like, man, like VeVe got hardball questions, fair enough, but like where was that for Cryptoys? If you're trying to inform a new entrepreneur coming into the space who's starting a company, because these are different business models, it would have been very important to ask the tough questions to both for the benefit of her audience. So let's see. Yeah, Mass will agree with me on that, right? Like, it's like there's so many people that haven't gotten into this space yet. It is still so new, right? But VeVe continues to crush it. And like one of the things that I loved is he was just like every week is a bull market for VeVe. I like that. I mean, what a fun answer. And even Andrew commented on that, like, you should have that up in your walls. I thought that was great. All right. So let's see. A misunderstanding. Look, I would love. Oh, I was misunderstanding that she had no questions to ask. She said she had 2 topics to discuss with Will and David. So, and TGB is saying Mask is dead on. I guess like I think that I'm still missing the point. Like, you have 2 topics to discuss. That's a roundtable, right? So you have these topics to discuss, but then when you're asking the questions to one, and then you're not asking the same tough questions or similar questions and asking those tough questions to the other entity, it does come off as a very biased interview, like and more of an interview than a roundtable. So yeah. Anyways, with that, I really appreciate everyone who stuck around. Again, just one last ask, right? Like, I'm trying to hit that 1,000 mark. That's a goal of mine for this year, and I would just love it, right? If you could smash, push, crush, gently caress, whatever you want to do, elbow it, slam it, right? Like, hit that like button, subscribe button, and all notifications button, so I can continue to grow my channel. I do put a lot of work into this, and I hope that it's informative for you guys, at least offering my perspective. And I'm fine if people want to come at me and say, hey, like, I think you're wrong about this, right? And let's talk that. But in general, ladies and gentlemen, please, let's attack the argument and not the person. I feel like the space will be so much better off that way, because I do have to say that there are people that talk about like the VeVe community, and sometimes like they get up in arms, and I get it, right? They when you have a community like that and you feel like your community is being attacked, people get really like offended, right? And go on the offense. But again, let's attack the argument as much as possible. And I promise you guys, look, honey attracts more bees than vinegar. And I think that when we can have those open discussions, and I would love, like, if Metamona wants to come on the channel and we can talk about it more, I'd love to do that, right? I have nothing to hide here. This was not anything about some sort of attack on her. I respect her. I highly respect her. And a lot of the things that she's doing. I want more people to come into this space and ask hard questions, right? And let's all learn and grow from that. So appreciate you, MC1, for sticking around the whole time. Hey, tapped it gently. Just like a little soft there. Appreciate that. O'Milly, I would, why not? Appreciate you, O'Milly. Listen, O'Milly holds some epic spaces. And one thing that I like about O'Milly, he does let people come up with contrarian views, right? He demands that it's maintain respect, that so that anyone can come in here and like it's a good space to. And this guy is constantly holding just epic spaces. So if you don't, O'Milly Tees on Twitter, absolutely. There's a lot of good people in this space, and I so love the VeVe community. We are a passionate group. Let's continue to like rein in that passion a little bit, like I had to that one time, right? And let's really just educate people, right? And come up with these arguments. And I appreciate the people who reach out to me and say, hey, I want to know your thoughts. That energizes me, right? That people value that opinion that I'm doing here. And so again, appreciate all of you guys. I like this. Look at this. Nas, what's up, Nas? Look, Turtle's got a good comment here, right? How was the elephant in the room question I asked about Will, about crypto and their Star Wars drop not selling out? these are examples of, again, hard-hitting questions that could have been given to both. Fam Bam, appreciate you guys. Hey, Guy and whoever, people like Dano, all of you guys, Aaron, come on, guys. Again, please keep it respectful. If I would have seen this earlier, I would have just blocked you guys from the chat, right? Like, even in my chat, I want things to maintain respectable. So if I see that again popping up before the end, we'll be done. So, hey, Slider, appreciate that. I don't like. Why not? I'll let you show it a little bit, TBs with Root. So anyways, guys, I appreciate you. Even in the chat, please try to keep it civil, right? We can have disagreements on these things, but let's not name call and things. And again, I appreciate you. I hope you all have a blessed Sunday. If Metamona happens to watch this, I just want to reiterate that even though I did have some issues with how this interview played out, this roundtable played out, I respect you highly. I'm very grateful for all of the hard work that you put into this space. I want to continue to see you grow. And this is just some feedback. Take it or leave it. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate y'all. Take it easy. Bye.